Hey guys, tonight I want to share something that has been stuck with me for years. I have tried ignoring it, laughing it off, even pretending it never happened, but it always finds its way back. Do not worry, it will not follow you into your dreams, unless it already has. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. It was my first night working the graveyard shift at Station 46, one of those sad little gas stations tucked just far enough off Route 23 that most global positioning systems ignored it. The kind of place where the buzzing of the overhead lights felt louder than the occasional car passing by. My buddy Kyle had worked there for a few weeks before me. He said it was easy money and perfect for someone who did not mind being alone. I liked the idea of being alone. That night, the air outside had that dry, dusty quality you only get after sunset in late summer. The pavement still radiated heat under my sneakers as I locked my car and stepped into the station. The interior was small, 2 aisles, 1 cooler, a counter, and a back room that smelled like wet cardboard and spilled diesel. Nothing fancy, nothing haunted. Not yet. I settled in quickly, stocked some gum, wiped down the coffee counter, and flipped on the old security monitor perched above the register. Kyle had left me a short list of tasks taped to the wall. "Do not mess with the boiler," was scribbled in his handwriting at the bottom with a little smiley face. I figured it was a joke. The first few hours passed slowly. I read part of a paperback someone had left behind in the break room. Customers trickled in and out, mostly locals grabbing cigarettes or energy drinks. I was just starting to get bored. Enough to sweep the front sidewalk when I heard the bell above the door chime softly behind me. I turned, broom still in hand, and saw her. She looked off. That is the only way I can describe it. She was old, maybe late 80s, with long, wispy grey hair tucked under a wide sun-bleached hat that did not quite match the night. Her clothes were modest and tidy, like she had stepped out of an old photograph. A heavy wool coat, brown skirt, thick black shoes that clacked against the tile floor. Her eyes were cloudy but sharp. I remember that clearly, sharp like they saw through me. She walked up to the counter and placed a single item down, a glass bottle of cola, the kind with a real metal cap. I did not even know we sold those. I scanned it, the beep echoing through the empty store. "That will be $1.79, I said. Without saying a word, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a coin, a silver coin. It landed in my palm with a strange weight, heavier than I expected. I turned it over. It was not a quarter, not even a silver dollar. It was smooth, cold and worn, but I could still make out the date on one side. 1912. I gave her a confused look, like I was not sure if she was joking. I do not think I can take this, ma'am. It is really old." She did not respond. She just looked at me and smiled. A soft, knowing kind of smile, the corners of her mouth barely twitching. Then, before I could say another word, she turned and walked out. I stepped from behind the counter, half considering going after her, just to say something. But when I got to the door and looked out, the parking lot was empty. No car, no taillights, just silence, and the flickering light over pump number 2. I still had the coin in my hand. It was cold, still unusually heavy. And weirdest of all, it made the inside of my hand itch. Not like a rash, not like a bug bite, like the sensation of something wriggling under my skin. I dropped it into the cash drawer, right where it belonged, and shook off the unease. A few minutes later, I poured myself a cup of coffee, tried to brush off the strangeness, and chalked it up to old lady weirdness. Small T.I. did not think about it again until around 3:30 in the morning. I was getting ready to do a final sweep of the lot before closing the cooler for the night, when I reached into my jacket pocket for my phone and pulled out the coin, not a coin. The coin, 1912. Same scratch along the rim, same oily coldness. I froze. I had not touched the register since she left. I had not even opened it again. I walked to the till, popped it open. Sure enough, the drawer was light. $1 and 79 cents short. The coin was gone. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I put it in my pocket without realizing it. Maybe I had gotten distracted. Maybe I was just tired. But something about the weight of it in my hand again. It felt intentional, like it wanted to be found, like it belonged with me now. I tucked it back into the drawer, this time burying it under a stack of $20 bills. I locked the till just to be safe. And yet, even as I turned the key, even as the metal clicked shut, I had the sense that I had not buried anything at all. I stayed jumpy the rest of that night, watched the monitor more closely, checked the parking lot twice. Nobody else came. In just me and that humming overhead light. When my shift finally ended at 6 o'clock in the morning, I drove home in silence, windows down to let the early morning breeze clear my head. I told myself it was just a fluke, a trick of a tired brain. I did not realize then that this was not the end of the weirdness. It was the very beginning. I slept terribly the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was being watched, not in the paranoid kind of way, but something deeper, more ancient, as if some part of the darkness itself had taken an interest in me. I kept waking, up in little jolts, my heart pounding even though I could not remember dreaming. I had the window open to let in the breeze, but the air felt stale, like it had been sitting in the room too long. Thick, unmoving. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I gave up on sleep. The coin was still on my mind. I could not shake it. That oily, cold feeling, that itch in my hand. I thought about tossing it, maybe leaving it at the station or giving it to a coin shop or something, but a part of me did not want to. As if I was supposed to keep it. That night when I drove back to the station, the sky looked heavier than usual. Not stormy, just pressed down, like it was holding its breath. You ever notice that? How sometimes even the clouds look like they are trying not to make a sound. The gas station was quiet. No cars, no insects. Just the sound of the humming sign and the slow click of the freezer compressor inside. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The lights flickered like they always did, and I did the usual routine. Clocked in, turned on the monitors, made a fresh pot of coffee. The coin was still on my mind. I checked the drawer. Still there. Still buried beneath the bills. Still cold. I left it there and tried to move on. At around midnight, a man came in. Middle-aged, balding, wearing a flannel shirt and work boots. He looked like he had just come off a long shift somewhere more miserable than here. I nodded at him. He did not say anything, just wandered toward the back coolers and grabbed a bottle of water and a pack of jerky. As he walked up to the counter, he hesitated. Not the kind of pause you make when you forgot something. The kind that means you saw something you do not like. "You all right, sir?" I asked. He nodded slowly, then glanced around the store. "This place always feel like this?" I blinked. "Feel like what?" He narrowed his eyes. "Heavy, like the walls are thinking." I tried to laugh it off, but it caught in my throat. "It is an old building." "Old," he muttered. Then he looked at the register drawer. "And I swear. To you, I swear," his entire face changed. His eyes widened just a fraction, and he leaned in like he was sniffing the air. "You sell antiques now?" he asked, flat. "What?" He tilted his head, then shook it. "Never mind." He paid in cash, 2 crisp $10 bills, and walked out without another word. I watched him the entire way. He did not look back, but his pace quickened the moment he cleared the threshold, like he could not get out of here fast enough. I stood there in the silence that followed, hands pressed to the edge of the counter. And then I opened the drawer. The coin was sitting, on top, not buried, not hidden, just sitting there, dead center, waiting. That time I picked it up. It burned, not hot, not like fire. It burned cold, like dry ice. Like something trying to pull heat out of me. I dropped it immediately, and it clinked off the edge of the counter and fell behind it, disappearing somewhere into the gap between the metal and the drawer. I cursed under my breath and bent down, fumbling with the flashlight from under the register. When I leaned over and shone the light into the crack, I expected to see the coin wedged down there. Instead, I saw something else. It looked like a finger. Just one. pale grey and wrinkled, like it had been submerged in water for too long. It pulled back into the dark the moment the light hit it. I jumped back, knocking the flashlight out of my own hand. It clattered against the tile and rolled away. I stood, there chest tight, unable to breathe. I looked again, nothing. Empty drawer, no coin, no finger, just dark. I spent the next hour pacing the store like a caged animal, checking the cameras, rechecking the drawer, trying to tell myself I had imagined that it was a trick of the light. That maybe I had not slept enough, and this was what exhaustion did to your brain. But then the bell rang again, and she walked in. Same woman, same coat, same hat, same expressionless face. She did not look at me, did not speak, just walked down. The aisle to the drink cooler opened the door and pulled out a bottle of cola, identical to the one from the night before, same brand, same glass. She returned to the counter and placed it down gently, like setting a child to bed. And once again, without speaking, she reached into her coat pocket and held out a coin. Same coin. I did not take it. I just looked at her, my hand trembling at my side. "Mom," I whispered. "What is this?" She smiled. "Wider this time. Too wide. Just paying what I owe," she said softly. Her voice was strange, thin, like paper tearing. I stepped back, shaking my head. "I cannot accept that. I already have—" But when I looked down, the coin was already on the counter, and she was gone. I swear to you, she vanished. No footsteps, no bell chime, no door opening. Just gone. The bottle of cola sat where she had left it, beads of condensation already forming on the glass, and the coin waiting. I did not touch the coin that night. I could not bring myself to do it. Something about it, its weightless presence, the way it gleamed without light, felt too deliberate, too knowing. It sat there on the counter like a dead thing, innocent. Only if you refused to look at it for too long. Instead, I placed a paper cup over it. I do not know why. Some ridiculous instinct, as though covering it might dull whatever strange vibration it gave off. It was a flimsy barrier, laughable in its purpose, but I needed something between it and me, even if it was only symbolic. Then I stepped back. I did not take my eyes off that cup for almost 15 minutes. I stood behind the counter, arms folded, tight across my chest, trying to ignore the way the silence in the store felt thicker than usual. The kind of silence that does not simply exist, it presses against you. No one came in. That was the first odd thing. Not a single car passed, not even the usual rumbling of distant trucks. There was always something outside. Even in the quietest hours, I would usually hear the occasional tires on gravel or the mutter of someone too tired to speak clearly. But tonight, it was like the whole world beyond the windows had been switched off. Only the old fridge made a sound, humming loudly at the back of the store, like it was protesting the stillness. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I remembered the cameras. There were 4 in total, one above the register, one above the entrance door, and 2 perched on opposite ceiling corners to cover the aisles. Cheap, grainy things, constantly recording but only keeping footage for 48 hours, unless someone manually backed it up. Still, they had caught shoplifters before. Maybe they could catch something stranger. I sat down at the little employee station behind the counter, logged into the feed system, and pulled up the footage from earlier that night. She was there. Least something was. The woman entered the store at exactly 1:27 in the morning. On camera, her movements looked wrong. Not fast, not slow, just stiff, awkward, like someone trying to imitate how a person walks. Her coat dragged oddly at the edges, flicking up every few steps, even though the store's air was still. I watched her pick up the bottle and move toward the counter. She reached into her coat pocket, and then she just froze. I leaned closer to the screen. There, on the grainy footage, her hand remained buried inside the coat. She never pulled anything out. She did not set anything down. Yet on the other side of the counter, I clearly reacted. I flinched, I backed up. I stared at the counter as if something had been placed there, but the counter was empty. Nothing, no coin, no bottle, not even a reflection. I rewound it again and again. I watched myself on the screen, dumbfounded, speaking to her, accepting something that was not there. It was like watching a bad dream play out on loop. Then I noticed something else. In the corner of the entrance camera, just outside the glass doors, there was a figure, not the woman. This was someone taller, much taller, slender, unblinking, its head nearly brushing the top of the doorframe. It stood completely still, no facial features, no color, just a black silhouette against the dim parking lot. I froze. I scrubbed the video back by one frame. Nothing. One frame forward. The figure, another frame forward. Gone. It appeared for only 1 second, and yet it filled my chest with something cold and wet and primal. The kind of fear that does not shout, it whispers. I shut off the monitor. 3 o'clock in the morning was ticking closer. The clock above the microwave read 2:59. I had heard the term witching hour before. It always felt theatrical. Midnight seemed more fitting for ghost stories and dead phone calls. But now, with the lights humming too loudly and the sky outside black as a void, 3 o'clock felt like something real, like a signal, a permission. That was when I heard it. A whisper. It was not the fridge, not the wind, not the buzzing of the fluorescence. It was words, muffled, distant. A woman's voice, humming or speaking gently, like she was reading aloud in another room. Too quiet to make out, too close to ignore. I turned toward the sound. It was coming from the back hallway behind the employee door. That door led to a tiny hallway, a bathroom, a storage closet, and a stairwell that descended into the basement. A basement I had never entered. The manager once told me, half-jokingly, that the foundation under the gas station was from the early 1900s. Probably cursed, he had said with a smirk. I had laughed then. Now the door was slightly ajar, and I had not opened it. The whispers were louder now, still in that same language, low and fluid, like it had been meant for water instead of air. I should have called someone. I knew that. But I also knew there was nothing I could say that would make sense. What would I tell the police, that a ghost paid me with a coin from 1912, and now I was hearing foreign whispers from the basement? I reached for the flashlight. We kept under the counter. Its yellow beam flickered slightly as I stepped through the back door. The hallway beyond was dark. None of the lights were working. The bathroom door was shut tight. The storage room stood empty. But the basement door at the very end of the hall was wide open. I stared at it for a long time. The stairs descended into perfect black. My flashlight could not even touch the bottom. The whispers stopped. Then slowly, I backed away. I returned to the front of the store. The paper cup had fallen over and the coin was gone. I did not scream. I did not move. I stood there, breathing too shallow, my heart crawling into my throat. I sat back down behind the counter, and I waited for morning. At 6 o'clock, when my shift ended, I did not speak to the manager. I walked straight out the door and into the grey light of dawn, never once turning my head. But as I stepped into the parking lot, I felt it, a presence behind the glass, watching me leave. I did not sleep that day. I lay in bed, fully dressed, my shoes still on, staring at the crack in the ceiling I had never noticed before. Outside, the sun was shining. Birds chirped. Neighbors watered their plants and dragged their garbage bins to the curb. The world moved on as if it had not heard what I had heard, as if it had not seen what I had seen. But I could not move on. I kept thinking about the coin, how it had vanished, how I had never seen her place it down, how the cameras showed nothing at all. I got up around noon. I had not eaten anything since the vending machine sandwich from the night before, but the thought of food made my stomach turn. Instead, I stood under a hot shower for almost 45 minutes, scrubbing my skin like I was trying to erase something invisible. The water steamed the mirrors, but even when I wiped them clean, I could not look at myself for long. I should have quit. That would have made sense, but I did not. Something, curiosity, pride, fear, I do not know, kept me tethered. It is strange how a person will return to the very place that disturbed them, as if proximity to the horror will help explain it, as if touching the wound will somehow make it heal. So that night, I went back. Same shift, same uniform, same store. Arrived 10 minutes early. The sun was just starting to dip behind the trees, and the gas station lights flickered on like blinking eyes. My manager, Raj, was sitting at the back desk, chewing sunflower seeds and reading a wrinkled newspaper. He barely looked up when I walked in. "Nothing eventful last night?" he asked, spitting a seed into a cup. I wanted to tell him. I really did. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he said it, the way he already expected the answer to be no. Or maybe it was the sense, deep in my gut, that saying the words out loud would only make them real, and I was not ready for that. So I shook my head. "No? All good." He nodded. "Cool. I am heading out. Keep the receipt printer fed. It has been jamming again." And just like that, he was gone. I watched his car disappear into the dark. The headlights painted long streaks across the parking lot before vanishing into the trees, and I was alone again. The silence was immediate, not gradual, not natural, immediate. Like someone pressed mute on the world. It started exactly the way it had the night before. Nothing. No customers, no wind, no distant traffic. Just me. And the coin was still gone. I checked. Under the counter, behind the register, beneath the display mat, nothing. No trace of it, but I knew I had not imagined it. I remembered the way it caught the light, the way it had pulled at the air around it. I thought about the woman again. Her face, her voice, her eyes. No. That was the thing. I could not remember. Her eyes. Everything else, her coat, her tone, even the exact shape of the bottle she had purchased, was vivid in my memory. But when I tried to recall her eyes, there was just blankness, like the memory had been burned away. That night moved differently. Time stuttered. I would glance at the clock and see it was 9 o'clock. Then I would stock a shelf, sweep an aisle and glance again, only to find it was nearly 11:30. It did not feel like hours had passed. It felt like something had taken them. I stood behind the register, staring at the front doors, willing someone to come in. A normal customer. Anyone. And finally, someone did. At exactly 11:46, a man walked in. I almost laughed out loud from relief. He was wearing a flannel shirt, faded jeans, and a baseball cap. Looked like a construction worker or a trucker. He gave me a nod, wandered down the aisles and grabbed a couple of candy bars and an energy drink. Normal. So painfully normal. I rang him up and handed him his change. I even made small talk. Asked how his night was going. "Too quiet out there," he said, glancing toward the door. "Road's dead, not a single car for miles." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I noticed." Then, just as he turned to leave, he paused. He pointed toward the back hallway, the one leading to the basement door. "You guys renovating back there?" he asked. I blinked. "No." "Why?" He frowned. "Thought I saw someone standing by that back door in the dark. Tall guy. The air in my lungs stopped moving. "No one should be back there," I said. "It is locked." He stared at me for a second longer, then shrugged. "Could be the shadows. You know how it gets late at night. Minds play tricks." And then he left. I did not move. I did not turn around. Not yet. I stood behind that counter for almost 20 full minutes, gripping the edge so tightly my knuckles ached. When I finally turned, the hallway light was off. But the door was open again. The same one. The basement door. It was wide open, wider than before, and the darkness behind it did not look like a lack of light. It looked like something hungry, something waiting. That was when the whispering started again. But this time, it was not. In the distance, it was just beyond the threshold, closer, so much closer. I should have left. Everything in my body told me to walk out the front doors and never look back. I could feel it in my teeth, in the soles of my feet, in the base of my spine, that primal hum that lives inside every person, the one that tells you when something is not just dangerous but wrong. But I did not leave. Instead, I walked toward the back hallway, slowly, as if my limbs belonged to someone else. My shoes made soft clicks on the old linoleum. With each step, the air grew colder. Not in the way of an open freezer or a broken thermostat, This cold felt unnatural, aware. It wrapped itself around my neck like a hand, not enough to choke, just enough to remind me it was there. The hallway was empty, silent. The humming fluorescence above cast a dull yellow light, and even though I was alone, I had the sickening feeling that I was being watched. Not from behind, but from below. The basement door stood wide open. It should not have been. The key was kept in a locked drawer under the register, and I had not touched it. But there it was, yawning open like a mouth, its frame crooked and rotting. Slightly at the corners, from inside the whispering continued, low and rhythmic, like someone was repeating a prayer in a language I did not recognize. The syllables curled in the air, soft and slippery, impossible to hold on to. I should have stopped right there. I should have turned and bolted, but I stepped closer. One more step, then another. I stood at the edge of the doorway, peering into the basement. There were stairs, of course, narrow and wooden, steep and old. They creaked even when untouched, as if remembering footsteps long since gone. The whispering floated up from the dark like smoke. The deeper I listened, the more it sounded like breathing. Slow, wet, rattling. Called out, "Hello, is someone down there?" No answer. But the whispering stopped. That, somehow, was worse. I stared into the dark for what felt like several minutes. My eyes slowly adjusted. I could just make out the bottom step, then the concrete floor, and then I saw something move. It was not large, just a flicker, a shift of shadow where no shadow should be. It moved again, closer to the bottom step now. That was enough. I backed away slowly at first, then faster. I did not run. I wanted to run, but I forced myself to move at a steady pace. I had a sudden, overwhelming fear that if I turned my back on the open doorway, something would reach out from the dark and grab me. When I returned to the front counter, I locked the register drawer, turned on every available light, and stood behind the counter with a metal flashlight in my hand. That was how I spent the rest of my shift, alone, wide-eyed, listening. The door to the basement never closed, and I did not dare to go near it again. I did not hear any more whispers, not that night, but the absence of sound became its own kind of torment, and then, just before sunrise, something strange happened. The lights in the store flickered, not once or twice, repeatedly. A stuttering pulse of white and shadow. The coffee machine let out a hiss. A single bag of chips fell from the rack on aisle 3. Every screen in the store, security monitors, register display, even the small weather alert TV mounted above the door, went completely black. And then they all turned on again. Every screen at the exact same time, and every one of them showed the same image, not camera feeds, not menus, a face, a woman's face. She stared into the lens, my lens. Her skin was pale, almost grey. Her lips were slightly parted as if she were about to speak, but her eyes, I still could not see her eyes. They were too dark, too deep, like holes in her face. I blinked, and the image was gone. The screens returned. To normal camera feeds, menu graphics, clock readings, no trace of the face. I stood there, frozen, until the sun finally rose. At 7 o'clock, Raj walked in, yawning, a to-go coffee in his hand. I had never been so relieved to see another human being in my life. "Morning," he said. "All good?" I stared at him, eyes heavy and dry, voice barely a whisper. "Yes, all good." I lied. Again. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Something had followed her coin, and it was not finished with me. The next day I tried to forget everything. I told myself it was exhaustion, or maybe some kind of waking dream. I had barely slept and my thoughts were unraveling, frayed at the edges like an old shirt cuff. That was all. A trick of the mind. A stress hallucination. That morning I walked home as the sun crawled across the sky. The sidewalks looked softer in the daylight, as if the world was trying to convince me none of it had happened, that it was safe. That I was safe. I slept with the curtains open. When I woke up, sometime around 5 in the afternoon, the sky outside was already a burnished orange. My alarm clock had stopped blinking. Power outage. I did not care. I got dressed and went. Back to the gas station like nothing had happened. like the night before was just another strange dream I had buried under my pillow. When I arrived, Raj was counting the till as usual. He looked up, gave me a nod. "You look like hell," said almost cheerfully. "Rough night?" I just smiled, and something like that. I wanted to ask if anything weird had happened during his shift, if he had seen or heard anything unusual, but something about the way he moved, the casual rhythm of someone totally unaware, told me he had not. The place was quiet again. Too quiet. I waited until he left, then started my usual routine. Clock in, inventory sweep, trash out, refill the drink coolers. But the whole time, I felt it again, that cold, watching presence. It was not loud. It was not obvious. It was just there, like a weight at the back of your skull, like a breath that was not yours. About halfway through my shift, I remembered the coin. I do not know why it hit me so suddenly. Maybe I thought it would make me feel in control again. As if finding the coin, holding it, could prove to myself that the night before had actually happened, and that it had left behind something solid and real. I opened the drawer under the register. The one with the rubber bands and the receipts and the petty cash. The coin was gone. I searched every inch of that drawer. I even pulled it out entirely and checked underneath it. Nothing. It was just gone. The woman's coin. The one from 1912. The one I had stared at in the fluorescent light and traced with my fingers. It had vanished. I looked around the store like it might be sitting on the counter or wedged under the register. I even checked the floor behind the counter, the trash bin, the shelves below, still nothing. I stood there for a long time, breathing slowly, trying not to spiral, trying to convince myself that maybe Raj had taken it, or that I had misplaced it, or that maybe it was never there at all. But I knew that was a lie, because when I leaned over the counter, trying to spot the coin under the receipt printer, I heard it again, the soft clink of metal on glass. I froze. It had come from aisle 4. The candy aisle. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked down the aisle slowly, scanning the floor as I went, and there it was, right in the middle of the linoleum tiles, glinting under the overhead light. The coin, exactly as I remembered it, tarnished silver, worn ridges. The woman's face on the front, half erased by time, her empty eyes staring up at me. I bent down and picked it up. It was cold, colder than it should have been, like it had been pulled from a freezer or buried in snow. And on the back, where the date had been, I saw something new. I swear to you, it was not there before. Below the year, stamped in tiny crooked letters, were the words, "Let her in." I dropped the coin immediately. I did not scream, I did not run, I just stood there staring at it on the floor. It did not move. But I felt something shift. The air in the room changed, like something had just entered, not through the front door, not from outside. It came from within, from somewhere behind the walls or beneath the floorboards, or maybe, just maybe, it had been here the whole time, watching me, waiting. The rest of the night passed in a strange blur. I left the coin on the floor. I could not bring myself to touch it again. It felt like something sacred, or cursed, maybe both, like moving it would be some kind of invitation. I went back behind the counter and just sat there stiff, still waiting for morning. I did not even notice when the sky began to lighten or when the first of the commuters came in for coffee. I do not remember much else about that shift, only that I was exhausted, and that everything inside me felt like it was unraveling thread by thread. The next night I came in early. I did not want to be alone with my thoughts, and part of me hoped that being there during the daylight would make it easier, brighter, safer. Raj was behind the counter, staring at the monitor that showed the store's security cameras. He barely noticed me walk in. "Hey," I said. "Everything all right?" He nodded but did not look away from the screen. Then he said something strange. "Do you know what this is?" I came closer and looked at the screen. The feed showed the candy aisle, aisle 4. The image was frozen, paused. Right in the center of the frame was the coin, sitting on the floor. My throat tightened. "When was this?" I asked. "About 2 hours after you clocked in last night," Raj said. "I noticed it when I was checking the feed this morning. Figured you might have dropped it or something, but—" He trailed off. "But what?" I asked. He rewound the feed. We watched. The coin appear, not fall, not slide, just appear. One frame it was not there. The next it was like magic, or a glitch in reality. Raj leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "That is not normal," he said flatly. I could barely speak. Did you check the cameras from the register? From my side?" He nodded, slowly, and tapped the keyboard. The screen switched to the register camera. It showed me, sitting there, half asleep, staring at nothing. But behind me, something flickered. Not clearly. Just a shadow moving quickly past the edge of the frame, like someone had walked behind me, but no one was there. There was no sound, but I could almost hear it. The faint whisper of something brushing past. Raj did not say anything, and I could tell he was trying to rationalize it. Trying to pretend it was a smudge or a trick of the light. But it was not. I knew that, because when I turned to look at him, I saw something behind his shoulder, a shape reflected in the dark screen of the unused lottery terminal. It stood still. Tall, thin, not quite human in shape. I blinked. It was gone. I made some excuse and told Raj I needed a drink. I walked to the back cooler, opened the door and let the cold air hit my face. I needed to breathe. I needed to be sure I was still real. I stared at the rows of energy drinks, the bottled water, the milks that were always one day too close to their expiration date. Everything was ordinary, and then I noticed something taped to the inside of the cooler door. It was a photograph, a faded one, like it had been printed a long time ago. It showed the gas station, but not as it looked now. The logo was older. The signs were different. The paint on the walls was a darker color, more muted. There were two people in the photo, one behind the counter, one standing at the register. I did not recognize either of them, and at the very bottom, scribbled in pen, "Closed after incident. Do not reopen night shift." I stared at that for a long time. Then I carefully peeled the photo off the door and folded it into my pocket. I did not ask anyone about it. I already knew no one would give me a straight answer. That night, when Raj left, I locked the door behind him and stood in the center of the store. Everything was silent, too silent. And then from behind the counter, I heard the coin again. Clink, clink. It was moving, all on its own. The sound was unmistakable. A coin rolling in a lazy spiral, bouncing gently on the tile. Clink, clink, clink. I froze, not out of fear exactly, but a kind of quiet dread that sits deeper, under the skin. The kind that builds not from what you see, but what you feel is just beyond the edge of your vision. I stepped slowly from the center of the store toward the counter, each footfall soft and deliberate. I peeked over the register, expecting to see the coin where I had last left it, or perhaps spinning in place like before, but there was nothing there. The floor was clean, no sign of the coin. Then I looked up. The woman was back. She stood just outside the front window, her figure slightly distorted by the smudged glass and the flickering neon. Same white shawl, same posture, her head slightly tilted, as if curious. Watching. I did not know how long she had been standing there. My hand moved instinctively toward the switch under the counter, the one that buzzed open the front door. But I stopped myself. Something in me screamed not to let her in, so instead I just stared back at her. She did not move. Not at first. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and pressed it against the glass. I saw it clearly in that moment. The exact same coin sitting flat in the center of her palm. The same worn ridges. The same faded profile of Lady Liberty on the face. A 1912 silver dollar. I could feel it in my pocket. The photo from the cooler. My hands were clammy. I wanted to call someone. Raj, my manager, anyone. But the phone behind the counter had no dial tone, not even static, just dead silence. And then, without a sound, the woman was inside. I do not mean I saw the door open. I do not mean I heard a click or a buzz. One moment she was outside, and the next she was standing inside the store, right at the threshold between the candy aisle and the coffee station. She held the coin out, and now I could see her face. It was beautiful in the way wax figures are beautiful, perfect but lifeless. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. There was no anger, no sorrow, no expression at all, just a hollow sort of expectancy, like she had been waiting. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My throat was dry, frozen with some invisible pressure. She moved forward, no footsteps, no sound. Just gliding, and then she stood before the mirrored panel of the lottery terminal again. I looked from her body to the screen. Nothing, no reflection. The store's flickering light buzzed above her, but she cast no reflection, no shadow. She turned, her head toward me very slowly. Her mouth opened, not to speak but to smile. It was a small smile, something knowing. And then she extended her arm and placed the coin flat on the counter. The movement was slow, deliberate. It made the faintest sound, metal against laminate. She turned and walked back toward the door, but before she reached it, she simply vanished. Gone. No sound. No exit. Just nothing. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the coin. I do not know how much time passed. Eventually, I found the strength to pick it up. It was ice cold, colder than metal should ever be. And when I flipped it over, something was etched into the back that had not been there before. One word, remember? I did not sleep after my shift. I went straight home, shut all the blinds, and sat on my bed, clutching the coin in my hand like it might anchor me to something real. But the more I stared at it, the more I realized the details were changing. Lady. Liberty's eyes looked deeper now, like they were staring back. The date, 1912, looked freshly carved, and on the edge, where once it had been smooth, a new line had appeared, so faint I almost missed it. It said, "She returns when—" The hour is still. I did not know what that meant, but I had a feeling it would not be long before I found out. It was just past 3 o'clock in the morning when the next stranger arrived. I remember that detail because I had been staring at the wall clock above the coffee machines for nearly 20 minutes, watching the minute hand tick toward that. Quiet hour when even time seems reluctant to move. The store was empty, silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator units in the back and the occasional creak of the walls settling. My skin still felt tight from the encounter with the woman. I had wrapped the 1912 coin in a paper towel and buried it deep in my backpack, unsure of why I did it, only knowing that I needed it out of sight. And then the bell above the door rang, that familiar electronic chime, but no footsteps followed. I turned my head toward the entrance. The automatic doors had opened, but no one stood there. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no headlights, just the sodium-yellow glow of the lamps and the fog collecting on the glass. I stood there, staring at the open door, waiting for something, anything, to make sense. Then I heard the voice. It came from the far end of the store near the walk-in freezer, a voice so deep, so hollow, that it sounded more like the wind dragging through a tunnel than any human sound I'd ever heard. "I remember you." I turned sharply, heart hammering. The voice had not come from outside, it was inside. I scanned the aisles. They were empty, all of them. Rows of snacks, stacked candy, energy drinks glowing under fluorescent strips, untouched. Then, just past the last shelf near the freezer, I saw him. He stood with his back to me, tall, lanky, wearing a dark trench, coat that looked soaked with rain, though it had not rained that night. His hair was white, not the soft white of age, but a stark, unnatural white like bleached cotton. I said, the voice repeated, though the man's mouth did not move. "I remember you." I could not breathe for a moment. The man turned then, slowly, as if on hinges. His face was pale, almost translucent, skin stretched too thin over bone, but it was his eyes that froze me in place. They were not eyes. They were holes, two black voids where eyes should have been. Not empty sockets, not injury, just absence, like someone had erased them from reality. I stepped back instinctively, knocking over a small display of gum packets. They scattered across the tile with a sound that seemed too loud, too real. The man smiled, but only with half his mouth. The other side stayed still, like it belonged to a corpse. I warned her not to trade, he said. The words came from somewhere deep, inside the store, inside my ears, inside my mind. It was hard to tell. I swallowed hard. Who did you warn? He tilted his head. She did not listen. She never listens. His hand reached into the inside of his coat and emerged with something small. Round another coin. He flicked it toward me with inhuman precision. It spun mid-air, cutting a perfect arc before landing squarely at my feet. Clink, clink, clink. I stared, down at it. My breath caught in my throat. Another 1912 silver dollar, identical to the one the woman had left, except this one was cracked straight down the center. I reached for it without thinking, but the man's voice stopped me cold. Do not touch it, unless you want her to know where you are. I froze. He stepped forward. The lights above him flickered. She follows the scent of guilt, he said, voice low. And your hands are already stained. I have not done anything, I said, though it felt like a lie the moment I said it. He turned his head slowly as if hearing something distant. Then he whispered something I barely caught. You remember her because she remembered you first. The man turned back toward the freezer door. He placed his palm flat against it and pushed it open without effort. A rush of cold air spilled out. Inside was only darkness. He stepped into it and disappeared without closing the door behind him. I ran forward and slammed it shut, heart racing. When I turned back, the store was silent again. The cracked coin remained on the floor. I left it there. I swept around the register, unplugged the security monitor, and stared at the blank screen, wondering if anything would have shown up anyway. Outside, the fog was thicker now, and as I looked at the door, I saw what I had missed before. A single handprint pressed into the glass from the outside, smaller than the first one, delicate, almost childlike. I stood in front of the glass door for several minutes, unable to look away from the handprint. It was unmistakably small, no bigger than the palm of a young child. The fingers were thin, with a strange kind of tension to them, as if whoever pressed them there had done so with quiet desperation. I stepped closer slowly, letting the automatic doors slide open with a gentle whoosh of cool, fog-laced air. The night outside had grown even more still, as if the world itself had paused, its breathing. Even the distant chirp of crickets had faded, replaced by a silence so total that it almost rang in my ears. I leaned in and examined the handprint under the yellow wash of the parking lot lights. It was not just moisture. There were fine lines, etched in what looked like dirt or soot. I reached out and touched it with my index finger. It was dry, dusty, like the residue left behind after something burned. But when I pulled my hand back, the outline of the child's print remained untouched. It did not smear. It did not fade. It simply stayed there, defiant against the laws of normal things. I stepped back inside and let the doors close behind me. That was when I heard the laugh. It was quiet, high-pitched, delicate, like the sound of a wind chime blown by breath instead of wind. It came from somewhere behind the aisles, near the candy section. I froze, listening. There it was again. A giggle, almost musical. I should have called someone, should have walked out, locked the doors and driven away. But I did not. I could not. My legs moved on their own, slow and cautious, drawing me toward the source of the sound. Each step echoed in the hollow belly of the gas station. As I rounded the last aisle, I saw her, a little girl standing alone near the rotating rack of comic books and crossword puzzles. She wore a faded blue dress with lace at the collar, and her dark hair was tied back with a red ribbon, though the ribbon looked frayed like it had been tied and untied 100 times. Her skin was pale, almost luminous under the ceiling lights. She turned toward me as I approached and smiled. Her eyes were too wide, not frightened, not sad, just watching. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Are you lost?" She tilted her head slightly, still smiling. "I came to get candy," she said. Her voice was clear, perfectly enunciated, but something about it made the hairs on the back of my neck rise, like a recording. Too clean, too even. I glanced around. No one else. "Where are your parents?" I asked. She pointed toward the back freezer. "Mommy is cold. She said she will wait there." I swallowed hard. My mouth had gone dry. "So you should not be here alone," I said. "Come with me. We will call someone." The little girl shook her head. "I cannot leave until I pay." She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out something small, another coin. Not silver this time. It was black, the color of char. Dull, with an oily shimmer, like it had been dipped in smoke. She held it out toward me. "I found this," she said. "It whispered to me." I did not take it. Every nerve in my body screamed against it. The girl stepped closer. "He said you would trade with me." "Who?" I asked, backing away slowly. She looked confused. "The man with the coat. He always brings coins." My back hit the counter. The cracked coin still lay on the floor where I had left it. She followed my gaze, then looked back at me. "Do you want this one too?" she asked. Her smile never faltered. I shook my head slowly. "No, I do not want any of them." The girl frowned. Her face darkened, not in expression, but in tone. The skin around her eyes seemed to dim, like a shadow had passed across her, though the lights above never flickered. "You already took the first one," she said. "You are part of it now." Her fingers opened, and the black coin rolled from her palm, landing silently on the linoleum. There was no sound. No clink, no bounce. It simply stopped. I stared at it, heart pounding. When I looked up again, the girl was gone. Vanished. I spun around. Empty store. No footsteps, no exit chime. Just gone. The coin remained. I did not touch it. Instead, I walked around. The counter sat in my chair and stared at the floor. The lights above flickered once, then steadied. I looked at the clock. 3:44 in the morning. Still hours to go before dawn. But something had shifted. The air was different now, heavier, as if something invisible had stepped inside and decided to stay. I did not clean up the gum packets. I did not mop the handprint from the door. I just sat there and waited, because I knew it was not over. Not yet. The hours between 3 and 5 in the morning are the softest, quietest, and most dishonest hours of the night. They do not scream. They do not warn. They pretend to be gentle. But anyone who has ever sat in stillness through that stretch of time knows that silence can be far more terrifying than sound. I sat behind the counter, watching the monitors without blinking, waiting for something, anything, to confirm I had not lost my mind. The little girl had been real. I felt it in my bones. But the cameras, nothing. No image of her, no black coin, not even a flicker where she should have been. The spot near the comic book rack was completely empty. And yet, the cold air, the way it still brushed against my legs, like someone had opened a freezer door and never closed it. I got up slowly, locking my eyes on the back of the store. The freezers lined the rear wall, silent and tall like glass coffins humming with frost. The middle door had fogged over, more than the others. I had not noticed that earlier. I walked toward it. With every step, the temperature dropped. By the time I reached the glass, my breath came out in misty ribbons. My fingers trembled as I raised them, brushing the frost from the door, and there he was, inside. No movement. Just a figure standing on the other side of the glass. A man in a long, dark overcoat that reached his shins. The collar was high, and he wore no hat. His face was almost obscured by the frost, but I could make out the curve of his jaw, the sharpness of his cheekbones. He did not move. Did not blink. He just stood there inches from the glass, looking at me. The breath caught in my throat. I stepped back, heart hammering, unsure of whether I had truly seen him. But then, the glass began to fog again, slowly, from the inside, and with it came a hand, pressed flat against the inside of the door. Not a child's hand this time, an adult's, large, weathered, and then another hand joined it, and another, and another. Soon, there were too many to count. Dozens of hands pressing from the inside all over the surface of the glass, some low, some high, as if an entire crowd of invisible people had decided to show themselves only through their palms and fingers. They did not pound, they did not bang, they just leaned, slowly pushing outward. I stumbled back, nearly knocking. Over a display of paper towels, my voice cracked when I spoke. "Stop, please." The door creaked, just a sound, like old hinges shifting under strain. The latch twitched, and then a low sound, a deep, dragging inhale, like lungs had just taken in air for the first time in years. I turned and ran, straight to the counter, slid behind it, grabbed the small wooden crucifix someone had left taped to the side of the register years ago. Most of the staff had laughed at it. I had too. Until now, I clutched it to my chest and tried to breathe. Nothing followed me, not yet. The humming of the freezers returned to normal. The temperature in the air began to rise, ever so slightly, but I could feel them still, waiting. I looked down and saw something lying on the counter, another coin. This one was silver but warped, like it had been melted and reshaped by a fire. I picked it up carefully, using a napkin. The year engraved on it, 1912, just like the first one. Only this one had something else carved along the edge, barely visible unless tilted under the light. A phrase, in all capital letters, "He who trades twice cannot go back." My throat closed. I wanted to throw the coin. I wanted to run into the parking lot and scream for someone, anyone, to help me. But the road was empty. No headlights, no early commuters, just darkness, and the soft, continuous hum of a place that had started to remember too much. And suddenly, I understood. The coins were not payment, they were offerings, markers, each one a tether, and the more I touched them, the more I was pulled into whatever was on the other side of that glass door. The man in the coat had brought the first one. The girl had delivered the second. What came next? I looked at the monitors again. They were off. All 6 screens, completely black. The store lights were still on. The radio still played static-laced music from somewhere behind the snack aisle. But the cameras were gone. And then I saw it. One word, appearing on the middle monitor screen, glowing in pale white. "Welcome." I did not move. I did not breathe. Andy. Somewhere behind me, from the direction of the freezers, I heard that low inhale again. Deeper this time, hungrier. There is a moment during the night shift, just before the sun begins to rise, when time seems to forget how to move forward. The clock above the coffee machine had said 4:23 the last time I checked. I looked at it again, still 4:23. I blinked, stared harder. 4:23. The second hand twitched in place like it was stuck between heartbeats, deciding whether to live or die, and that word, welcome, still glowed faintly on the monitor in front of me, its letters trembling slightly, as if breathing. I pressed every button beneath the screen. Nothing. I even tried unplugging the cable from the back. Still, it remained. I should have called someone, should have picked up the phone and dialed, but when I reached for it, I found the receiver was already off the hook, dangling quietly, swaying ever so slightly, as if someone had just set it down or passed it to me. And in the background, breathing, soft and wet, not through a speaker, not over a line, but as if someone stood just beside me, whispering each breath into the space between my shoulder and ear. I slowly turned. There was nothing, only the long aisle leading to the drink, coolers and snack racks, but the air there seemed thicker now, heavy like underwater pressure humming against my skin. I walked forward, drawn like a thread being pulled. Each step felt quieter than the last. No footsteps, no rustle of movement, just the distant hum of refrigeration and that low, persistent breath. When I reached the coolers, the lights inside flickered once, then returned to steady white. All but one door, the fourth from the left. It remained dark, and on the fogged glass, just like before, was a handprint, smaller this time, delicate, feminine. I opened it. My hand trembled as I gripped the handle. The door creaked louder than it should have, and inside, nothing. Just shelves of bottled tea and energy drinks. Except one thing had changed. There, where the Arizona cans should have been, sat a coin, bronze, smudged with something dark that glistened faintly in the fluorescent light. I stared at it, did not want to touch it. But I did. I wrapped it in a paper towel and picked it up. The weight of it was wrong, too light, almost hollow, and... Yet, the moment I held it, I heard something shift behind me, a soft scuff on tile. I turned too fast, my shoulder bumping the open cooler door. There was a woman standing at the end of the aisle, hair long and black, wet at the ends, like she had just stepped out of a storm. Her dress was white, or had been once. Now it was a shade of grey, stained. At the bottom, she did not blink, did not move, only stared. I wanted to say something, to ask her if she was lost, or needed help, or had come to return the damn coins. But my mouth refused to work. And then she pointed, not at me, but at the counter, the register. I followed her gesture with my eyes, and there, behind the counter, was the old man in the overcoat, just standing silent. He should not have been able to get in. I had heard no bell, seen no motion on the monitors. But he was there, watching me. The woman began to cry. No sound, only tears sliding down her face, each dropped too slow, like they fought gravity to remain close to her eyes. Then she turned, walked away. I tried to follow her, but the floor beneath me shifted slightly, as if the tile had become sand. I stumbled, caught myself. When I looked back, she was gone. So was the man behind the counter. But the door, the main glass entrance to the store, it was wide open, swinging gently. The parking lot outside was no longer dark, not exactly bright either, just wrong. The sky had a faint reddish hue, like the last light of sunset had gotten trapped and bent in reverse. I stepped to the doorway, felt the warm air meet my face for the first time all night. And that is when I saw it. There were no cars, no road, no station sign, only endless dirt and a wooden path made of planks stretching into the horizon like a boardwalk to nowhere. In the distance, silhouettes, not people, but shapes, shifting, wandering, waiting. I looked down at the coin in my hand, the bronze one. The words carved into it. Trade 3 and walk the path. I stood frozen. Then slowly, mechanically, like something inside me had made the decision without asking permission. I stepped outside. The moment my shoe touched the first wooden plank, the world behind me vanished. Gone. Just the path, the sky, the figures waiting in the distance, and the knowledge that I had touched 3 coins. I could still feel each one burning faintly through the fabric in my pocket. I did not know where I was going, only that it was no longer my decision. And the moment I took that second step, the wooden boards groaned, like breath caught in an ancient throat. And somewhere far behind me, in the store I could no longer see, a bell rang once, soft and low like the start of a new shift, a shift that might never end. The boards beneath my feet were warped and soft in places, like they had been soaked and dried 1,000 times. They stretched forward endlessly, swallowed by that bruised red sky and flat, lifeless horizon. The air tasted like copper and something sour, as if the whole world had been left out too long and had begun to rot. I do not know how long I walked. There was no sound but my own heartbeat, which no longer seemed to belong to me. It pulsed in my chest like an echo from someone else, someone older. The path wound slightly, barely perceptible, but I followed it because I could not do anything else. My legs moved automatically, as if bound to some old rhythm. Then the silence cracked. It started as a soft scraping, like fingernails over bark, from ahead and behind. I turned slowly. Nothing was visible, just the same distant red haze and those shapes in the distance that never grew closer nor disappeared. But then came the whispering. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, layered over each other in a wet, papery chorus. My name was not spoken, not exactly, but I could feel the intent. They knew me, knew everything I had done, knew I had taken the coins. The planks beneath me groaned again. Then I saw it, a booth just up ahead, like one of those old toll booths you used to pass on back roads. It stood crooked on the edge of the path, its windows fogged over, its door hanging on one rusted hinge, and beside it stood the woman again, the one in the grey dress. Only now, her hair covered her face entirely, draped forward like a curtain of black moss. Her arms hung too straight at her sides. She did not move. I should have turned around, should have run. But I kept walking, closer and closer, until I stood only a few feet away from her, from the booth. That is when she finally moved. She raised one hand, slow and deliberate, and pressed it against the side of the booth's wall. Her fingers splayed wide, leaving a wet outline behind. Then she pointed to the small window in the booth. There was a slot beneath it, like a tray meant to take a ticket or a toll. I hesitated, reached into my pocket. The coins felt heavier now, as if the act of walking had fed them, made them hungrier. I placed the first one on the tray. It vanished. Not slipped, not dropped, just gone. The woman shivered, her whole form twitching violently once, like a marionette with tangled strings. Then, stillness again. I reached into my other pocket, placed the second. It vanished as well. A low groan echoed from the booth, not mechanical, not human, something in between. Like an animal mimicking a machine, I gripped the third coin tighter. The last one, the one the child had given me. My fingers refused to let go, but something pulled them, not from outside, from within. I tried to resist. I failed. The coin dropped. And, as it did, I felt something deep inside me unlock, not in the way a door opens, but like a dam cracking. A sudden rush of memory poured in, things I had not seen, or had refused to see. The gas station. Late one night, a woman stepping inside, soaking wet, silent. She had handed me something heavy, a coin. I had nodded, placed it in the till, and told her to take whatever she needed, but she had not come for gas, not snacks. She had walked straight to the back storage room, closed the door, and never came out. I had forgotten. The cameras had glitched that night. The boss said to not worry about it, so I did not. Until now, the woman standing before me. She lifted her head, and I saw her face for the first time. It was not decayed, not monstrous, but wrong, too still, too smooth. Her lips parted, and in a voice that was not her own, she whispered, "You let it begin." Then she stepped back into the booth. The door closed behind her without a sound. I blinked. She was gone. Only the path remained, but now it forked, left and right. Identical in appearance, no signs, no markings, just the same cracked wood and red-smeared sky above. I waited, hoping something would tell me what to do, but no voice came, only silence and the wind, finally rising, carrying with it the faint scent of gasoline. From the left, my feet moved before my brain could argue, toward the scent, toward something I hoped would resemble home. But as I walked, I realized something else. The whispering, it had never truly stopped. It was inside me now, repeating that same phrase, "You let it begin." And I had no idea what it meant, not yet, but I was getting closer, too close. The path narrowed as I kept walking, the boards creaking louder now, almost protesting my every step. The wind was colder, drier, scraping against my skin like it was trying to peel something off me. That scent of gasoline had grown stronger, mixed with something else, charred rubber and something sweet, almost like syrup gone rancid. It reminded me of the station after closing, when I would sweep up behind the pumps and catch hints of what people left behind, half-eaten donuts, spilled diesel, and the stale trace of perfume that lingered long after a late-night customer had vanished into the dark. But this was thicker, clinging, alive. I do not know how long I had been walking, only that time had folded in on itself. The red sky never dimmed nor brightened. I passed a sign that was bent backward, unreadable. Rust covered it like scabs. Then, I saw the outlines of what looked like cars, rows and rows of them. Wrecked, burned, stacked haphazardly like a junkyard forgotten by the world. I stopped in front of the first one. It was familiar, not the make or model, but the sticker on the back window, a faded peace sign, and a cracked high school parking permit. I knew it. I had filled it with gas almost 3 years ago. The guy had come in late, nervous, said he was just passing through. He paid with a $50 bill and never looked up from his phone. But he had not driven out. He had walked around back, said he needed to use the bathroom and just never returned. I had assumed he left, but the cameras had skipped again that night. I stepped back, heart lurching. The next car was worse. The front windshield still had a smear of blood, and in the driver's seat was a child's booster, sun-faded but intact. I remembered that car too. A woman and her daughter. They had pulled in during a storm. The child was crying. The woman had asked if she could wait inside until the rain passed. I told her sure. I even brought her a hot chocolate from the staff lounge. She had smiled, tired, grateful, but she had gone to the back room too. Said she heard something, said someone was knocking. I had not followed her. I should have. Now here was her car, decades older than it should have been, sunken into the floor like it had been sitting there for years. I turned to leave, but the path had vanished. There was only junk now, wreckage. The sky began to flicker like a dying bulb, and from behind one of the crushed vans, something rose. Not walked, not crawled. Rose. Its shape was human. Almost. But its arms were longer than they should have been, and its face was covered in dozens of copper coins, stuck to its skin like they had been hammered in. They glittered in the sickly light, and I recognized some of them. Their edges, their years, 1912, 1968, 2003. They were all from people who had vanished at the station, people who had paid. Like she had, like the woman in grey. I took a step back. The thing moved with me. Its arms did not swing. They swayed, and it made a noise I cannot describe, like coins dropping endlessly onto concrete, echoing in a vast, empty room. I turned and ran. Clambered over twisted metal and broken glass. My hands bled, my knees buckled, but I kept going until I found it. The edge. The path again. It was narrower now, cracked and unfinished, like it had been built only up to this point and then abandoned. Below was nothing, just fog, endless rolling fog that shimmered like oil on water. I heard the whisper again, closer, but it was not behind me this time. It was beneath me, rising from the fog. My hands were shaking. I reached into my pocket, but there was nothing left. No more coins, no more choices. The air vibrated, and from behind me I heard the dragging steps of that coin-covered thing getting closer. I closed my eyes and took a step forward, into the fog. Falling felt like floating at first. There was no wind, no gravity pulling me down, only a strange kind of pressure like being held underwater in a dream. The fog surrounded me, filling my ears, my nose, my eyes, even the spaces between thoughts. Time stretched into silence, then I landed, not with a crash, not with pain, just a soft thud, like I had been gently placed onto something warm and breathing. I opened my eyes. I was back. Back at the station. But not the real one. Not the one with flickering lights and soda stains on the floor. This version was pristine, frozen as I. If someone had painted it from memory, my memory, but got the details a little wrong. The shelves were too neat. The magazines were all from different years. The walls had no grime, but they seemed to pulse slightly, like they were alive. Outside, the windows, the world was pitch black. No headlights on the road, no crickets, no wind. Only a tall woman in grey standing just beyond the glass. She was not moving, just watching. Her hands were clasped, and in one of them I could see the coin. The same one. The one from 1912. The Liberty head gleamed as if it had just been minted, untouched by time, blood, or flame. She tilted her head, and I heard her voice, not with my ears, but somewhere deeper, like a whisper blooming inside my bones. "Now you know," she said. "Now you belong to the rest." The door opened behind me, not the front door. The one at the end of the hall, the one with the peeling paint and the flickering exit sign above it. Only it was not flickering now. It glowed steadily, invitingly, like it had always been meant for me. I turned slowly. I do not know what I expected. Maybe the pit again. Maybe the junkyard, maybe fire. But it was just a room, grey walls, one chair, and a desk with a cash register, exactly like my old post. Except on the counter, instead of the bell, there was a stack of coins. Every one of them was from a different year, a different time, a different disappearance. I heard the chime, not the real one, the one we used to hang above the door. This one was deeper, more distant, as if it came from below the floor. And then the front door opened. A man stepped in, middle-aged, nervous, holding a map and blinking like he had not slept in days. He looked around. "Hey," he said. "You open." I looked down. My hands were resting on the counter now. The light above me buzzed faintly. The register opened with a soft ding. "Yeah," I heard myself say, my voice hollow, far away. "Cash or card?" The man smiled, relieved. "Cash, hope that's okay." He handed me a bill, but I did not look at it, because behind him, outside through the glass, I saw them, all of them, the customers, the ones who had vanished, the girl with the booster seat, the man who asked to use the restroom, the woman with the hot chocolate, all of them standing just outside the glow of the neon lights, mouths slightly open, eyes hollow, watching, waiting. The man did not seem to notice. "Long night, huh?" he said. I nodded. He took his receipt and stepped back toward the door, then paused. "By the way," he said, "do you hear that sound?" I froze. It was faint, but I heard it too. The sound of coins dropping one by one onto a floor I could not see. Endless, metallic, soft. "No," I said, smiling just a little. "Not anymore." He nodded, satisfied, and left. The door swung shut. Behind him, I turned back to the counter. The register was open again, and on top of the coins sat a single new one. Shiny, fresh. The year read 2025. I picked it up slowly, feeling its weight. It was still warm. I did not need to ask who it belonged to. I already knew. The station never truly closed, and the night never really ended. It just changed shifts. And now, it was mine.